you to think back to the first time you ever remember being truly afraid. What was it? Does it stick with you today? This is the sort of thing that we talk about on the House of Asher. Won't you join us? And welcome to the show, everybody. This is episode 33 of House of Asher. I'm your host, Stevie Asher. And we've got a great guest tonight. Before we get into that, I do want to give a shout out. I have, as some of you guys know, I am now going to be simulcast on WPKY, your hometown radio station, home of the Tiger Plug. That's 103.3 FM in Princeton, Kentucky. In the mighty WPKY. And I have a sponsor, Dunk's Tires. Dunk is a real solid guy. I've known this guy a long time, and he is just blowing up. Cannot be more proud of this young man, and he was kind enough to sponsor the show. So, like I said, as he likes to say, life gives you a number two, call number one, and he'll come take care of that. I love that. I love that thing. For some reason, it sticks with me. It's funny. Anyway, like I said, this is episode 33, and as you guys know, I'm a monster kid, monster middle-aged kid, I guess at this point. But I grew up on that stuff, and the guy, like I said, as I mentioned, Cecil's a creep, and the Count, and one of the other guys that kind of grew up in that same sort of lineage and decided to pick up the horror host flag and run with it was my guest today, best known as Dr. Gangrene, but I guess given by birth before he was baptized into the horror mantle of Dr. Gangrene, Mr. Larry Underhill. And I'm so glad I got that right. Larry, welcome to the show.
Underwood.
What did I say? Okay, at least I didn't call you Larry Talbot.
Well, you didn't call me. I went on a podcast the other day, and he called me Underwoman. I said, well, now there could be worse places to be.
On a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. Well, there's that. Like I said, live radio, you got to love it. And I apologize about that, Larry. So,
all right.
Now that we've got that huge flub out of the way, welcome to the show, buddy. And like I said, I appreciate you taking the time, and I know you got all kinds of stuff going on, and I appreciate you meeting me here in my little inner sanctum.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Man, anytime. So, man, tell me, man, what's been going on, man? And like I said, it's been a while, kind of hitting back and forth to get with you and stuff, and I've been following what you've been doing, and checking your stuff out on YouTube and liking this and that, and leaving little comments and whatnot. And the thing that I had noticed that you have sometimes with, well, okay, everyone has their own shtick. Everyone has certain how you say this. Certain people have certain deliveries. Some people are very deadpan. Some people are very creepy. Kind of old school, Universal-esque. The kind of guy that talks like this. Or then you have some guys that are very like this and super aggro. You don't seem to come off like that. You kind of come off almost like, the creepy yet approachable, doctor that's got all this, goodwill, but you're still from that world. It's like, I'm the approachable scary house at Halloween. You know what I'm saying? And I've always appreciated that.
Yeah. Well, when I first started my show, I did a little bit more of a accent or voice or something, but it just over time, just pretty much, just started using my own voice. It's just, easier that way for me, and just sort of felt right. So that's what I ran with.
Well, I tell you, that's one of those things that it seems like, well, you're trying to do your delivery and you're trying to do whatnot, and whenever, just like in playing music and, well, even on the show, I'm ad-libbing right here. I'm just sort of delivering right, kind of off the cuff, and if you're sitting here, having to think how to speak a certain way, it's just another hurdle. And then you're going to catch yourself if saying something like you flub and go, oh man, and it's like, oh, where'd your accent go? What do you mean? It's that type of thing.
It is. It can also kind of be a tool though that helps. I've noticed some hosts like Zachary, would use when he would speak, his voice would sometimes, oh my boy, then he could use it as ways you could tell to pause while the wheels were turning, so he'd kind of think of a comeback or the next line or something, get that laugh in, and then you could kind of tell, So it can kind of help too, though.
Right. Well, I knew I was watching a thing, American Scary, and there was the thing, and he was always talking to his wife, which was. When I was little, I thought, oh, well, it's someone off screen. They didn't have the money for another person, so he would be talking into like a box or talking into whatever, and have, then he would, have that kind of voice, piped in, and it was just like we didn't have the budget for another person. And but no, I mean, yeah, I agree. The when you're doing like the things that you did and the way that you delivered, it's not necessary. There was another guy, and I'm trying to think of his name. Really straight guy. Was his name Bob Wilkins? He was a very straight deliverer guy. Yeah. I think he's the one. He's got to have the cigar, right? And he sat there and kind of talked to you.
He was in California. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's him. Was it say horror keeps America strong or something like that?
That's right.
Yeah,
he's keep America strong. Yeah,
that's
Bob Wilkins, and he was followed by John Stanley out there in the L.A. market.
Right. Did you?
San Francisco market. Yeah.
Right. Well, since we're kind of just throwing out some names, I had a friend of mine, which I don't know if you're familiar with Trundle Manor up in Pittsburgh. It's sort of an oddity. Well, it's an oddity shop house, kind of almost a compound, and they have all these different characters. And I have a friend named Mike Syke, and was sort of like the unofficial announcer and spokesman for it. And they have all kinds of different stuff, like blanking on the name, he's going to kill me. Basically, where you have like kind of like hot rods and kind of rat fink cars and like and the coffin cuties and stuff like that, and you kind of tie all this other stuff in. And he was telling me about a guy named Chili Willy, and he had
Chili
been
Billy.
Chili Billy. There it is. Chili Willy was a little penguin. I love him too.
Love Chili Billy. I'm a big fan. Chili Billy was in the original Night of the Living Dead movie. He was the announcer in that movie. Chili Billy Cardille. He was on the air in Pittsburgh for years.
Yeah, big wrestling connection guy too.
And I've met Chili. I've interviewed him several times. He was such a great guy. I mean, every time I met Bill, he was just acting like he was my best friend. But, Doctor, great to see you again. Come up and give me a big hug, and just the best guy you could ever hope to meet.
Well, that's something that I found in speaking to people, like as we mentioned a little bit off air, Penny Dreadful, which I know you guys had done your own little specials and stuff together, and just the thing that I've noticed, because people are like, you talk to a lot of horror hosts. It's because they're cool and they're open. I've not really met anybody that's rock stars and stuff. Sometimes people have time to talk to you, sometimes they don't. I contacted Svengoolie and spoke to him a little bit. It's just sometimes people have time to talk, sometimes they don't. And even if not, they're always personable and they always contact you back. I've not been snubbed by anybody in that arena. And that, I don't know, you would think someone reaches a certain echelon in the game, I guess, as it were, that there would be a lot of attitude and stuff like that, rock star stuff. But I've just not really seen it. And if it is, they've kept it quiet. And that's fine. I don't worry about it.
I've had nothing but positive interactions with my colleagues. Everybody I've ever dealt with, online or in person, has been great.
Yeah. Well, and you would think it's safety in numbers. And there's a thing. Either you have with humans, we'll pack together. We're a family. We're a brotherhood. Almost, and I mean this in the most positive way in the world. Almost a carny atmosphere. Almost Gabba Gabba. We accept you, one of us, and which was Freaks which is what I lifted that from. I think that shows you the heart of it. I think it's comes from a really positive place, and I think that at least, and this is my, what do you call it, armchair psychology of it. Everyone likes to pretend. Everyone likes to play a character, and it's especially Halloween. I remember there was a song back in the day, and it was talking about people waiting for Halloween. Waiting to kind of kind of be who they can't be during the year for whatever reasons and stuff. And you guys always just kind of wear your inner face, as it were, on your sleeve. I mean, you're just right out there, and that's what's so great about it, because again, you have people from different ways of carrying it and different ways of presenting it, and I don't know, I've always dug it. I don't know, it's always drawn me. And as I sent you some pictures and stuff of kind of my goofy attempts of Halloween, and that's my time to be a horror host. I have the little smoke pods out front, and where I have the little remote, and to the kids that come up, and I'll be like, welcome, when the smoke goes up, and cackle, and the kids like, yeah, they come up, and give them candy, and everybody's cool. So they get a little scared, and they get candy too, which is great. And but like I said, when did you, was there a time that hit, like you went, yeah, I'm going to give this a shot? Or did you do it almost as a dare, or did you do it as, were you in contact with some of the old school guys, and they said, well, you should do this? So,
yeah, no, actually, the way that it came about, this was in 1999. I started my show in 1999. I had moved to Hendersonville, Tennessee, and previous to this, I was writing and drawing comics. I ran a comic book company from 94 up to about 98. Self-publishing comic books, writing them, drawing them with my partner Chuck Angel. And I had my youngest son was born, and so it was just too much work. I said, Chuck, I can't keep doing this. It's so much work writing and doing sequential art. It's just so hard. So anyway, we moved up here, and we were up here for about a year. Moved up here in 98, up here for about a year, and I met a guy who was doing a cable access show, and I was just asking him questions about kind of, hey, what's your show like? How much work do you put in? This and that. He just kind of stopped and looked at me, and he lived right around the corner, just a couple blocks away, and he said, you should try your hand at this. I think you'd be good at it. And I said, I don't know if I've got time for that. And he said, no, seriously, you think about it. I think you'd be good at it. So I kind of did. And of course, the only show that interested me was doing a horror host show, because I remembered Sir Cecil Creep from when I was a kid, and had not ever seen really many other hosts except for Elvira, and of course I'd seen Up All Night with Rhonda Shear and stuff like that, some of the national things.
Sure.
But I had always was a huge Sir Cecil Creep fan. As a matter of fact, I still had my patch from Boy Scouts when I was in Scouts. We got this patch that says Sir Cecil's Ghoul Patrol. And I still have that patch. And about a year into my run as a horror host, I sewed that thing on my lab coat in tribute to Sir Cecil Creep. And I still wear it on my lab coat.
And that's gnarly.
In tribute to Sir Cecil. But I talked to my buddy Chuck. I said, Chuck, you know what? I think I want to do this TV show. And Chuck said, okay. And he kind of figured it would last, maybe an episode or two. Well, here I am going on, next year's my 20th anniversary and still doing it. So, it lasted a little more than a few episodes.
Right.
But, so I got here at the house. There was a shed, kind of a double shed, two sheds put together. And that's where I built my set. And the rest, just took off from there.
Well, something that, and you were talking about the comic stuff. It's strange how, I think, what was the thing? What was the thing that they said in Jurassic Park? Nature finds a way. I think if you're an artistic person, I also draw and stuff like that. Never to the point of doing that. I studied the how to do comics the Marvel way and all that. I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I think if whatever thing doesn't fire necessarily, so you can spend 20, 30 years beating your head against a wall and getting bitter or whatever, or you let that cool and try different avenues of artistic expression, be it in poetry, be it in music, be it in interpretive dance, whatever. I never did that, but nobody wants to see that. But it was a thing where I think that's just the nature of it. I think there's a little bit in us that, even if you're kind of introverted, I'm kind of a quiet guy, even though I won't shut up. But I'm kind of a quiet guy unless I'm in my circle. You remember in Ghostbusters when Ray come in. He's like, "Oh my God!" And there's this activity under the city. And Vickman said, "Ray, you're scaring the straights." It took me for years and years to learn to pull it down, put it back in first gear, focus, and go. And once I did that, especially once I started doing writing, that's when, for whatever reason, the gears caught and it kept running. And this whole thing that I'm doing right here is just a weird happenstance. I did this because I used to help. I would help co-host on some shows, and that was okay. But I kind of like being able to choose my guests. I'm kind of selfish like that, because some it's not that I didn't like the people we spoke to, but it's like, yeah, okay, let's have this guy. Okay, well, hey, let's try to get Reggie from Phantasm. Hey, let's try to get, and
Sure.
maybe they want to talk about ley lines, or they want to talk about whatever UFO abduction, and that's cool and that's really neat. But my feet are definitely coated in graveyard mud. That's where I was birthed and raised, as it were. I wasn't birthed in a graveyard, but you know what I mean. And there's that thing. Are you familiar with Walter Simonson or Simonson, whichever, did like a lot of the Thor artwork and stuff like that?
Oh yeah.
I know I'd seen where he did an interview, and he was talking about when if you're running with the brushes and you're running with this and you're setting up the screen, because like when I looked at stuff, even when I'm doing episodes, I see things like a movie. And so I set up, okay, I know light angles are this way and this way is going on, and this is the momentum of the scene. I've always been like that. And did you find, because I know you said it was so maddening to try to juggle not just the storyline, but enjoy all that, with comics, did you find it more freeing, or was it as sort of complicated on a certain level doing the horror host shows and doing the different specials and things like that as it was in that situation?
Well, I think as long as it's a creative expression, I think people get the satisfaction from it. Whatever it is, if you're a creative person, you're gonna express yourself in some way. And so, be it that art, music, whatever it is. And so, yeah, it just was another form of expression for me. I stopped doing the artwork, and actually by the end of the comic book run, I was finding myself writing a whole lot more than I was doing art. I started out as an artist, but over time I started writing, and Chuck started doing more and more art, and I found that that's really where my strength was, and turned that into writing over the years since I started doing the horror host thing. But it's either writing or horror hosting or shooting some kind of movies or television or something like that. It's just always a constant expression of one kind or another. So yeah, it's just as satisfying.
Right. Do you like being a family man, as I am? Do you find it sometimes, and I know I'm kind of getting to nuts and bolts and stuff, but I know sometimes it's hard for me. I am kind of a workaholic, and I'm like going, okay, I know I've got today's little interview lined up. Okay, I wrote X amount of this for my upcoming books, because I've got like book 3 and book 4 pretty much wrote in my series, and then I'm working on some more books, and then I'm also working on artwork, and then I'm also working on these different products to take to signings, and I'm talking to people about signings. And sometimes I gotta go, yep, no, I'm just gonna sit and watch a movie with the family, or I'm gonna do this and that. Did you find yourself having to put the brakes on stuff for that, to go, look, I can't neglect my family in this, because your passions are very strong? Because I can tell that you're similar into that, because like you said, you're a driven person. You have to be if you're going to be successful.
Right. Yeah. So when my kids were young, it was definitely hard when my kids were young. They're all grown now. My youngest is 21. So one of them's moved out of the house. The other 2 live with me still. And so, yeah, but when they were young, there was absolutely a time where the show started getting more and more. It was getting crazy popular. I was getting phone calls in the middle of the night here at the house. People were, had a stalker at one point, and just some really crazy stuff going on. And it's at one point my wife was just like, listen, we got to put some brakes on some of this. And I couldn't have, there was literally not, almost at one point a night would not go by without the phone ringing with somebody wanting something, either me to just talk about what projects, working, my partners talking about what projects we're doing, or somebody trying to get me to do something here in town, or whatever it was. it was pretty out of control for a little bit, and yeah, I absolutely had to kind of put the brakes on it and say, listen, you know, family's first, and you know, let's just kind of get this, bring us back to, you know, because like with most horror hosts, this was a labor of love. This wasn't something that I was getting paid for. So, you know, although I did, you know, move the show, transition it onto our local CW station. It started out on cable access and then moved to CW, and then they provided the movies for me. And so that was broadcast into all of Middle Tennessee, up into southern Kentucky. You probably could have picked it up there at the time.
Right.
And down to northern Alabama. So that was my range. So yeah, so that was good. But yeah, it there was a time where I absolutely had to pull it back.
Well, that's the thing that I guess people maybe that's not in the scene, as it were, don't get, because I mean it's like, okay, well there's this guy, he's a musician, he's doing really well. Okay, well this guy's an actor or doing whatever, or he's a sports guy, and you're gonna have, you know, it's not necessarily like superstar status, but in the realm of whatever, you know, just like, you know, we talked about, like you were Cecil was sort of like your guy, and like where the count was sort of mine. Like if somebody might have walked past the guy, you know, like Bob McGee, not thought much about it, and I would have went, holy crud, that's the dude, you know. And of course I'm like, okay, bring it down, don't want to scare the guy. But there's that thing, and then people are forgetful of that outside of their own little fandoms, which I think anybody who's went to like a Wizard World or Wizard Con or anything like that, people are very rabid about their fandoms. You know, I mean, just talk, God, good Lord, start a conversation about Star Wars and which Star Trek, which is better. You're gonna have people about, you know, dog cussing each other if they're not careful. You know, which I've always been a centralist on any of that stuff. I'm like, look, just enjoy all of it, enjoy it, and please don't. There's so much other stuff that's life and death stuff. Enjoy this. Just go with it. Don't make it weird. But I was going to ask you. You were talking about doing your sets and all that, especially when you were doing them at home. Did you? I guess being an artist, did you do a lot of your own sets, or did you have some people? Because I was watching tutorials on taking like foam board, and you can set and do different stuff with it, and use like a hair dryer to make it look kind of molted, or it looks like stone, and really a lot of artistry goes into that. People, you know, go and get. Well, I mean, if you go to like a high-end horror shop, there's a place that I go in Madisonville, and they're always very. They have a lot of like really high-end stuff. Some of the props are kind of expensive, and people don't. I don't think people realize the work in the love and just the time that goes into making a nice looking set.
Sure. Yeah. So the first set I did do myself. It was brick walls, and Chuck and I spent a whole weekend building it. We had a swinging bookcase that I would enter through, and then I had a different set on the other side of the shed, laboratory set. And then, but when we took the show to the CW, I had a guy who had reached out to me and asked if he could start. A guy named Ethan Black, who asked if he could start helping out on the show. He wanted to volunteer. He just was a fan, and so I said, yeah, sure. And so he came over and redid the walls and did them all exactly what you're talking about, with foam and creasing them with heat, and you know, the whole thing, and painted them all up, and it looked really good. And then later, for a third show called Dr. Gangrene Presents, I did a house set with wallpaper and fireplace and that kind of thing, and I did that set also. So yeah, I mean, it's just been both.
Right.
That's the design goes, yeah.
Well, you know, that's the thing, because I mean, if you'll follow, it's funny because, like you said, you can kind of watch the change from sometimes very simple sets and very little very little budget. A lot of times it might be, well, hey, we got like a chandelier from whatever, there's an old house that they're going to tear down and it's half broken. They can't sell it, but it would look really creepy, you know, with like some green lights behind it. Or here's somebody's got whatever, you know, like an old coffin from, or like a Halloween prop or something, you know. And I always thought that was really cool. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, people generally take what they can find and repurpose it, which I find that to be another great thing. Because most people think, you know, I mean, I guess you can go out and buy brand new everything, but why not reuse that? Why not?
No, it's just another form of artistic expression. The backdrop, the costume, everything, it's all part of it. It all goes together.
I would agree. And
It's like a big Halloween costume, you know?
right, and that's a great thing for me, because like I said, if you know, like God, I'm trying to think of the name of that movie. Was it Halloween Town or something? It was a kids movie. It was one of my kids' favorite films, and you know, they love like all the Tim Burton stuff and all that. And I'm like, you know, I may change my mind after a week and living somewhere like that. Dude, I would totally live in Halloween Town. I would tell, you know, there's a place called Holiday World. I don't know if you've ever been there in Santa Claus, Indiana.
Yeah, I have.
And I used to go there, and my favorite place, other than, you know, wherever they had funnel cakes, I'm a big boy, I like to eat, was, you know, where you can go get a goblin burger, or you can go get this and that. Do you ever have to kind of detox from it to the point of going, yep, nothing orange, nothing black, nothing with jack-o'-lantern, I'm just stepping way back from that and just not, you know? Or do you just kind of go, hey man, that's just part of my persona, that's just part of my vibe, I still like it? I mean, can you kind of overdose on that Halloween cheer?
No, not really.
Okay, I was hoping that's what you'd say.
It's all horror movies 24 hours a day. I mean, it's, you know, we throw some other stuff in there too. I mean, yeah, I say that. I say I don't really ever get sick of Halloween or horror movies or any of that stuff. Although I do plenty of other stuff outside of that. So I guess I do step away from it. I have a day job that is completely, you know, separate from all that, and that's an 8-hour break a day, of course, you know. And but when I'm home, you know, I'm usually watching movies with my son or hanging out here and, you know, doing fun stuff right in line with all that.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, that's what it's about, especially if you've got kids that are into it. And the thing is, when you have little kids, you know, you kind of got to take it slow. Because like I said, I was introduced to horror extremely early. I mean, I'm talking like, what year did The Exorcist come out? I'm blanking.
72 maybe.
Okay,
right around there.
I caught that probably 2 or 3 years after it come out. I was born in '69. I was way too small for that. But scared the crap out of me. But over time, you know, I learned, you know, to go, okay, well, this is pretend. Because when you're small, it's really hard to differentiate. But when you were small, did you have like either a series of movies that you preferred that really kind of got you into it, or was there like television series? Like for me, obviously Vincent Price, which I'd sent you a picture right behind me. I've got from him in The Bat, and he's got the Bat overhead and stuff. A lot of Vincent Price stuff, especially the Poe adaptations. And for television stuff, horror-wise, definitely was Kolchak, you know, the Night Stalker. That was like, he was my dude. I used to ape him walking around with like a little cheap hat with a press card in. I was such a dopey-looking kid. I'm sure I worried my father a lot. He was probably thinking, what's going to come of this kid? But, you know, did you have something like that? Or were you pretty much like a normal kid? Or were you always kind of bent toward stuff like that?
Yeah, it was always a preference towards that stuff. I remember early on, the Vincent Price stuff that I saw on TV, it made a huge impact, particularly House on Haunted Hill, House of Wax. I remember seeing that in the theater and reissue. That was in the 80s when it came back around in 3D.
Right.
But as a kid, so I was born in '66, so I'm just a few years older than you. I remember there was a show in Nashville called The Big Show that used to come on in the afternoons. It was a unhosted movie show, so they showed different horror movies. It came on in the afternoon, so when I got off school.
Right. Was it like a double feature or matinee type thing where you have a series of
Yeah, and that would be on one channel and cartoons would be on another channel. So if the movies weren't anything I was interested in, you know, I'd flip over and watch all the cartoons and of course the Munsters and Addams Family and all that. But when they were showing good stuff, I remember really clearly them showing the Universal series of monster movies, and they would have a Frankenstein week where they would show all the Frankenstein films, and a Wolfman week, and they show the Wolfman films, or showing the creatures back to back, all three of those, and you know, that was awesome.
Well, I remember that was when they first got the rights to put those on television, and in like kind of syndicated, where they could kind of rotate them out and whatever got the rights or whatever it's called. And that's, like I said, that's when it really hit me and my older brothers, because like I said, that was the sort of thing, like we would sit up and watch The Count, and stuff would scare me still. So we would sit and watch it, and I'd have a blanket, and usually the scary scenes I'd duck under the blanket, which over time you kind of get desensitized to it. It wasn't as bad, and then I could kind of watch it, half covered up, not really ducking under the blanket. But before it was over, I didn't need the blanket, and it was one of those like rites of passage, like going, where's that creepy house? You gotta go knock up on it, or, gotta go to the garden and take a flower out of old man Jenkins stuff. Don't let him get you; he'll turn you into a pie or something crazy, whatever goofy stuff kids say. But did you catch the House of Usher kind of thing? Did you even get that?
Yeah. Oh no, not. But now that you say it, I totally do.
Okay. Well, somebody said that. I was trying to come up with a name, and I was like, there's all these, something into darkness and this and the wop, and I was like, well, I don't want it to necessarily be all dark. I want it to kind of have different stuff, and it's kind of about stuff I like. And I was talking to them, like you said, about the Vincent Price stuff, and they're like, House of Usher. I said, no, I don't want to call it my name. Everything I come up with just sounded like crap. It just didn't. The other one worked really well, and then so when I posted stuff, people may be looking for House of Usher or anything Vincent Price, it would pull it up, so it would kind of connect me in just this weird way of searches, and it seemed to stick. In the times that you've done your series, was there either a film you wanted to air, or maybe a guest to have on, or something that you can tell me, like, okay, well, we had this one prop we were using, but this went horribly wrong, or I wanted to use this prop, but I could never get it okayed? Was there some stuff that you kind of wished maybe you could have done differently, or something you might have said, well, maybe would have went a little bit further with this?
Oh yeah, I constantly think, man, I wish I could have done that. So, living right here in Hendersonville, Sheb Woolley used to live just 5 minutes down the road from me. Sheb Woolley wrote, of course, sang The Purple People Eater.
Yes.
He's a movie star. He was in a lot of movies and a lot of westerns and some movies with Clint Eastwood. A whole bunch. He had a whole career. I wanted to talk to him about his career. I remember I contacted his wife and talked to her, and he was in really bad health, and she said, well, he might be able to do something. Would this be a video interview or a voice, just voice interview? And I said, well, I'd rather do video, but I should have just said whatever he'll do, because she would have let me talk to him over the phone and do a voice interview, and I could at least have gotten his voice on there and put his picture up with it, and done an interview with him for the show that way. But I was never able to connect with him, and he passed away shortly after that. And there's things like that. You always think, man, I wish I'd reached out to so-and-so, while they were here. And as far as movies go, there's a lot, millions of movies, tons of movies I would love to have hosted. I got to show a lot of great stuff. The station had a package of films, and they would give me a list every month. And one of my favorite ones I got to host, I remember I told my producer, I said, hey Mike, if you ever see a movie called The House That Dripped Blood come up,
yes,
I really want to host The House That Dripped Blood, because number one, I'm a huge anthology fan, but also I was looking at our schedule and realized that year, that Saturday fell on May 26th. Our show was going to run from May 26th into May 27th. Peter Cushing was born May 26th, and Christopher Lee was born May 27th, and they're both in that movie. And I thought, how perfect would it be if we could show The House That Dripped Blood and have it air on both their birthdays? Well, it just so happens he calls me up a few months later and goes, hey, Larry, remember that movie you said you wanted to host? I went, which one? He said, House That Dripped Blood. I said, yeah. He said, man, you're not going to believe this, but we've got it. It's on the list of movies we've got this month. I said, you're kidding me, man, right? And he's like, no, totally. So I got to host The House That Dripped Blood and made it a big birthday celebration for Cushing and Lee.
Right.
So that was kind of fun.
Well, I remember I had, God Lord, man, like Ingrid Pitt, another big like Hammer
Yeah,
alum, and just all kinds of big names in it, man. And it
yeah. I
was
love
like a
the Amicus films are the best. Those Amicus horrors are my favorite.
right. Was there because like you said, we talked about for me like the Hammer influence was so steeped in what I would call like classical horror. Even when it had like more modern settings and stuff, it always had, I don't want to say very British, but it had that timing, and it had the setting and the lighting and the tempo. There was a certain cadence to a lot of that. Which of course by then you were already having a lot of the grindhouse stuff coming out, and you had a lot of different stuff coming out. I always, which don't get me wrong, I mean, obviously grew up on everything from freaking Jaws 3D to whatever, but there was always something about those films that really resonated with me, and I think a lot of times it's just like the settings of it, and the cinematography was great in it, just like the old, like Bride of Frankenstein, like a lot of the because so much of it was black and white, you could really play with the shadows, and shadows was to me as important as some of the plot stuff, because it set the tone. You could emote so much just in simple plays of shadows, and sometimes what you didn't see was more scary than what you did. The theater of the mind is an extremely potent element, especially in films like that. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen. Well, let me ask you this. Let me take a slight detour from that. Like, is there some stuff that's coming out now that you're like, I really like this film, or I really like the direction with where maybe this director is taking stuff? I know some people that, which don't get me wrong, definitely love 60s, 70s, 80s, and what would you call classic horror. Is there stuff that's coming out now that you're like, I really liked what they did with this. I really liked the sort of the tempo and the feel and the whole what am I thinking? Just the whole play out of this.
Mhm.
Is
It's
there,
rare to find modern horror movies that push the right buttons. For me, the Babadook was good. I like that one. There's here and there's some. I mean, I appreciate different elements about most horror movies, and modern horror movies that I watch, but it's rare for me to find one that I really am 100% behind. The Witch, was that the name of it? The one that came out a year or two ago was pretty good.
yeah. Yeah, I really like that too. There was my girls weren't so much into it. I think it was like, well, it's kind of slow, and I'm like, it's building the mood, sweetie. You kind of get, and it's not that they're dumb kids. These kids are smart, very very bright kids, and they're knowledgeable on horror. But for whatever reason, it's just whatever. Which, I mean, thinking there's some newer films that would have just like so many jump scares. It's like, you can kind of feel the jump scare building. It's going to happen. Something's going. The guy opens the mirror, in the bathroom and closes the medicine cabinet back. It's either something going to be there, or he's going to turn. There's going to be something that's there. You kind of, the formula at this point.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that plays a part in that, because I'm the same way. There's very few that I'm, not kind of like, okay. I mean, well, okay. The Village, which I don't know if you would consider that a horror movie. I think it was psychologically spooky, and I'm excited about, and I'm not trying to spout off about the movie. There was a new thing that was tied in with what was it, Unbreakable, and was it Glass or something like that, where it's tying in those characters. And I'm blanking on the movie. It had the guy from the X-Men. He was bald-headed. He had split personalities.
Split.
Okay, there it is. And I think they're pulling all that together. I'm kind of excited for that. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, that looks great. Yeah. But again, that's not a horror movie. Although it's got a few elements, I guess, with the Split character, but it's more a superhero thing. But yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. What do you think? And I know we're kind of winding down, and I do want to ask you about some other stuff you're involved in. Where are you on, like, how they were trying to do The Mummy? They were going to do a whole reboot of the kind of Universal monsters for the kind of a modern age. I heard, like Johnny Depp was going to be either the Invisible Man or Jekyll and Hyde or something like that. And it kind of seemed like it fizzled out. For whatever reason, that movie just didn't hit on whatever calibers right. And I hate that, because I think that the people that they had are quality actors, and I'm just kind of curious, would you like to see them come out with kind of a next generation?
Well, I would like to see them do it, but not the way they were trying to. The problem was, and the reason why it didn't work, was that they were making superhero movies. They weren't interested in making a horror movie. And if you're going to do the Universal line of characters, you've got to make them gothic horror movies. That's the only way the fans are going to accept it. You cannot do it and expect people to go see them and accept it as a superhero film. It's not a superhero thing. That Mummy movie was as much a superhero thing as it was horror, and that's ridiculous. You can't turn it into the Justice League Dark. This needs to be horror. It needs to be scary stories. The Wolfman needs to be a modern day scary Wolfman.
The closest I've seen tying in, the Legion of Doom was closer to a scary movie for me than that new adaptation of the Mummy. And I'm not trying to bag on them, but I calls them like I see them. What is the thing Yogi Berra says? Was it I don't know if it's art, but I like it, or something like that. I think it was Yogi Berra. If not, I'm giving him credit. Well, let me ask you this, and I want to say thank you for coming on and putting up with my silliness. Is there some stuff that you're involved in that you want to make mention of? Is there some events that's coming up that you might want to holler about?
Sure. I've got a lot of events coming up. Of course, October's coming up. That's always the busy time of year. Always has been. I always call it my busy season. I'm hosting at the Georgetown Drive-In in Georgetown, Indiana. I'm hosting Race with the Devil, Peter Fonda movie about a group of two couples that are on vacation in an RV, and they park in this secluded area one night, and a couple of guys kind of wander over a hill, and they wander into the middle of a sacrifice, a group of devil worshippers that are doing a human sacrifice, and they're spotted by the devil worshippers, and they are on the run. They say, "Oh crap!" They take off running, and the whole rest of the movie is a chase movie, a road movie with these devil worshippers chasing this RV. It's great. It's a great movie. I'm hosting that at the Georgetown Drive-In. It's at the end of September, and I don't know the date right offhand. They are going to make a big formal announcement about it soon, but I think it's the next to last weekend in September, and that's called the Creepy Cruise In. This will be the third year that I've hosted that, and last year was fantastic. Every single spot was sold out. This is a two screen drive-in, and every spot was filled up last year.
Well, listen, I was going to say, get me the links to all that and some the other things that's coming up, because I'm getting ready to wind this down. And I do want to thank you for being on. There was a band, Black Oak, Arkansas, that had a song called Race to the Devil. I don't know if that was in the movie, but it should have been. I think Black Oak, Arkansas was super killer. And they were kind of wrote a lot of weird, creepy stuff. A weird way to take the show out, but there it is. That's how I do it. But I do want to thank you, Dr. Gangrene, for showing up and talking to me, a fan, and the other fans out there. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want you guys to enjoy the rest of the day, but as the shadows grow long, I want you to check under your bed, check in your closet, look out back. You never know, you may have the doctor going through all your old medical tubes trying to make some new monstrosity in his lab. And above all, I want you guys to love each other, love yourselves, and stay scary.